going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Winners Win podcast, presented by iKon Boats, brought to you by your host, Braden Cox. Today, we're joined by a special guest. It's a show that I haven't really done many of before, down to the BFL level on the Major League Fishing side. We're joined by the Potomac River BFL champion, Alex Johnson. So welcome. I really appreciate you hopping on here.
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, thanks for having me on anytime.
Yeah, it should be super fun. Like I said, I haven't done a show at the BFL level yet, kind of going through that high school and college fishing to where you are now. So it'll be cool to go from shows I've done in the past of high schoolers and college kids to see kind of how that actually progresses and end up getting you a win at the BFL at the level. That'd be cool to see. How does it feel to actually get that win? Have you had wins at this level before, or is this your first one?
This is only the second BFL I've ever fished. So, first one I've won. I don't, to be totally honest, I don't usually fish the BFLs because of how the payout structure is now. It's not great, but our mutual friend Jason, he was fishing the whole series, and the way my work lines up, I have a little bit of time off of work right now. He was like, "Oh, you should come down. You know, they're doing the BFL to Potomac." I always loved the Potomac. I've loved the Potomac for years. So I was like, "Yeah, screw it. I'll just go down. You know, do a fun fishing trip because I haven't been there yet this year, and I'll throw in a tournament while I'm at it too." So it was kind of a last minute thing. We decided to hop in it like a week or two beforehand and just go down and have fun.
I'd say being 1 for 2 in BFLs is a pretty good stat to have.
Yeah.
But before we get too far into it, if you could just introduce yourself for anyone that doesn't know who you are, just say your name, where you're from. I know you mentioned having some time off of work, so what you do as your day job, and if you could say like your favorite technique to fish.
Yeah. Yeah, so my name is Alex Johnson. I am from New Jersey, Central Jersey to be exact. I live in Milltown, small town right next to Rutgers University. I fished for Ramapo College before now that I'm graduated and I'm on my own life. And I guess, I mean, I like to pride myself as being a very versatile angler, but if I had to pick something, it would be as simple as just flipping a jig, which is actually what I was doing for most of this tournament. So
It's kind of hard to beat that bite when they thump it
yeah,
and you get to stick them.
nothing better.
Right. So you mentioned fishing in college. Just talk to me how your college experience went fishing-wise. Did you fish in high school to go into college? Did you start tournament fishing in college? Just talk to me a little bit about how that went and your team dynamic while you were in college.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just telling this story the other day. You have probably heard of him, Louis Minetti.
Yep.
He was a friend of mine back in high school, and I always grew up like fishing. Like my dad was a big trout fisherman, so I'd trout fish and we'd fish ponds and stuff. But I never really did tournaments or really knew anything about tournaments until Louis messaged me on Instagram and convinced me to come to this meeting for a fishing club. I didn't know what that meant, and I showed up and it was the high school Bass Nation. And I was like, I don't know. I don't really want to do tournaments. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I didn't want to embarrass myself. And he was like, oh, just come to the first one and see if you like it. So I went to the first one with two, like, 5-foot ugly sticks and a little tiny tackle box with, like, a couple crankbaits and rooster tails and stuff in it. And ever since that day, I was like, okay, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And then my boat captain, my senior year of high school, wound up being a guy named Andrew Anuzzi, who was the president of the Ramapo College fishing team. And he kind of convinced me to go to school there to do fishing. I honestly didn't really want to go to college at first coming out of high school, but I made a deal with my dad that I would go to school if I could fish. And then, you know, that was pretty much the deal. I went to Ramapo, saved up for a little while, got a little bit of help from my dad, and got my first bass boat, which was a 2018-foot Triton. We went to our first tournament at Smith Mountain Lake in Virginia, and I'd never even turned the key on a bass boat. I didn't know how to drive it. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was looking at with the maps. I didn't know how fish finders work. I didn't know how nothing worked. And over the course of the next 4 years, we kind of just figured it out.
That's super cool. A little bit sidetracked. Were you pretty stoked when Minetti won Team of the Year on the college bass side?
That was unreal because so he's a year younger than me, so he won team of the year after I graduated. So it was kind of a fun little thing to be able to like sit back and watch and like not participating in it and being able to like just strictly root him on. That was pretty crazy. I mean, he went to the Bassmaster Classic. He got his opens paid for. I mean, he was living the dream.
Yeah, it was super cool to watch, and just like being able to compete at that high of a level with the equipment that he had was crazy. But
Oh yeah.
talk about your college fishing too. A little bit of like Instagram stalking before. I saw you were pretty successful in college. So talk to me about how you ended up going from, like you said, not even turning a key on a bass boat in that first tournament to being as successful as you were
Yeah,
through those 4 years.
it definitely was a learning process. Like I said, I grew up fishing, so I kind of had a natural inclination to like, just being good at figuring it out and getting bites and stuff. But I didn't know at all what I was doing from like a tournament aspect, and it took a couple of years. I mean, I had one top 10 my freshman year and a top 10 my sophomore year, so we squeaked into the national championship both years. But both times, if I'm being totally honest, I feel like we're at least a little bit lucky. Like I just kind of landed on them, but it didn't really totally click until my junior year. And really, honestly, the biggest thing, in my opinion, my junior year was like it was more mental than anything. Like I just got the confidence to be like not afraid going to a tournament anymore, and instead of being like, oh wow, all these good fishermen are here, to being like, no, I'm one of them, and I'm gonna beat all of these guys today. And from that point, like halfway through my junior year to the end of my senior year, me and my partner Zach, we just went on a run. We had a lot of confidence and a lot of momentum. I think we top 10 6 tournaments in a row. We almost won the FLW National Championship. We blew it a little bit on the third day, but we were leading through 2 days down in Grand Lake, and it was just it was a magical year, that senior year, and it kind of gave me the confidence coming out of school to feel like I at least somewhat put it together and that I could compete.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty incredible run your senior year. So how do you think college fishing like impacted the angler as you are today? Like, do you think it taught you a ton in those 4 years and really helped you develop, like getting to
Dude,
travel the country as much as you did?
dude, it was everything, in my opinion. Like, I mean, I'm sure being a college fisherman yourself, we get so many opportunities and get sent to so many different places that would never ever even be a possibility otherwise. Like, we got to see so many diverse fisheries and different places all around the country, and you're only there for a few days or a week, so you don't get to master per se a lot of these fisheries, but you get to see so much stuff that you never would. Being from New Jersey, where it's mostly trolling motor only, shallow 5-foot grass ponds, a lot of the stuff that we learned growing up and we did locally, like it teaches you how to grind and it teaches you how to junk fish, but outside of that, it doesn't really translate super well. And a lot of, pretty much all of my bass patterning, bass migration, bait selection came from a foundation in college fishing.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And like I said, like you said, as me being a college fisherman right now, it's crazy how much you learn just traveling the country to all these different places. If you had to take, it's probably hard to say, and I'm assuming it's going to be from your senior year, but if you had to take like your one best memory from college fishing, whether it be like your best tournament finish or whatever that would be, what do you think that would take that cake for you?
I it's tough to say anything else but that senior year national championship. It was in Grand Lake, Oklahoma. Um, Jason, our mutual friend, was there. Our other mutual friend, Pat, was there. My buddy Brennan was there. So like all of the previous 2 national championships, me and my partner Zach kind of had to travel by ourselves, and then this senior year, like our whole travel group actually got in, and it was like perfect because we got to do like one last hoorah, with everybody that we always traveled with, and it wound up being such an insane tournament. I mean, I don't know if you remember back in 2021 when there was that deep freeze and the Texas power grid went out.
Yeah.
That was the week we were there.
Oh my gosh.
So like the lake was freezing while we were fishing. Like we were literally running through ice in the middle of the lake to get to our spot. And like I said, we were leading it through 2 days, which was unreal. Unfortunately, we kind of blew it on the third day. Came up short of a limit and didn't win the thing. But it happens. Either way, no matter how you want to slice it, that's kind of the keystone, put a stamp on it moment in my college career, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, getting to lead a national championship even any day is a pretty incredible feeling. So how does that, what does your tournament schedule look like now that you're out of college fishing and into the real world, I guess? Like, what tournament series do you fish now? Is it mostly just local stuff, BFLs? And, well, I guess you said you only fish 2 BFLs, but just what do you primarily focus on now?
I actually don't usually, like I said, fish the BFLs just because, in the Northeast Division, the travel is crazy for a tournament that's only a $200 entry fee, and then on top of it, it's only 65% payout now or something. It's ridiculous. So the amount of time and money you have to spend on it, you would almost have to win every tournament for it to be worth it. So that's the main reason why I don't do the BFLs. But I guess the main thing I'm fishing right now is just the state Bass Nation, the New Jersey Bass Nation. This is my second year doing it, which is pretty cool because they're big tournaments that you don't have to travel super far to, and it also you ultimately can go to the Bassmaster Classic. I'm going to the Nation National Championship in November here, which funny enough is also on Grand Lake. So I'm looking to hopefully get some revenge on that one. But it's cool because it's kind of like a middle ground where you get to fish a big tournament with a good amount of boats, but you don't have to travel far, and there's still something legitimate on the line. And then, I fish a lot of local stuff. I fish a local club with my buddy, a bunch of opens. Me and my buddy Ryan fish the TBF team series in New Jersey and stuff like that. So
you still got a good amount of fishing. That's super exciting to get to look forward to that Grand Lake National Championship. It's funny that I'm assuming you've only been there one other time, which was your senior year. So that'd be, like you said, try to get a little bit of revenge on that place. 2 national championships, both on Grand Lake, and a little bit of good history in the past. So, that'd be awesome to be able to go back there. And, what's on the line there is a little bit higher stake, I'd say, than the college national championship. Not discrediting a college national champion at all, because that's awesome. But, what's on the line there for that one is a lot higher stake, obviously.
Yeah, there's 3 Bassmaster Classic berths on the line. There's a full ride to the Elite Series on the line. So it's pretty cool stuff. It's still a dream of mine. I do plan on hopefully one of these years when I have enough money fishing the opens and stuff like that. It's still something I want to do. But, coming out of college, you pretty quickly start to realize it's not as easy as you thought it was going to be. To do. So until that point, this is kind of my my shot in the dark at it.
Yeah, there's so many, obviously it's very difficult to do, but you got to look at the Brandon Poliniks, the Mike Iaconellis.
Mm-hmm.
It's doable, and
Absolutely.
The people that make it, they can be very successful doing it. So until, like you said, I think a lot of people just assume they're gonna fish the opens right out of college, and then when you look at the finances, it's unless you have something crazy going on, it's really not feasible. So,
yeah, and it was perfect timing where I was gearing up to fish the opens, and that was the year they switched it from 3 to you have to fish all 9.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, well, there goes that.
Right.
I would have already been fishing them for 2 years now if I only had to fish 3, but fishing 9 all around the country is just impossible.
Yeah, between the financial part and missing that much work and
exactly
everything. Who has 9 weeks off of work? Nobody.
Yeah, that's honestly the biggest problem. I could bankrupt myself and go do it. I could scrape the money together somehow, some way, but then I can't make money at the same time because there's no way I can work while I'm traveling the country.
Right, exactly. And by the time you pay all that money and between travel, gas, tackle, entry fees, and everything, it's not, the payouts aren't as low as BFLs, but by the time you like you said, you'd almost have to win one to even make money. I think
Yeah,
There
you'd
was,
have to be in the top 10 pretty consistently to like
yeah, I think there was some
maintain one.
stat about when Robert G qualified. I think he was fourth. I think he was fourth in AOI for 2 years ago, and he broke even.
Oh my
Like
god,
that's crazy.
that's
Like
so
I mean,
ridiculous.
how difficult it is against all those guys to come fourth AOI and then just break even. But
Yeah, I mean that's exactly. I saw the same thing on a Facebook post the other day. Some guy posted that like the guy who finished third or fourth uh last year in the BFL standings made like 100 something dollars. Like
yeah, that's ridiculous. Like that is not an easy thing to do, and then you get $100 for it. Like that is not even worth it. At
yeah,
that point, you're just fishing the BFLs just for fun.
yeah, that's the gas to drive down to one of them.
Right, exactly. And that's, I guess, why you've only fished two. I don't blame you.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
getting a little bit into your tournament win, obviously, it was this past Saturday on the Potomac River. So, what's your prior experience on the Potomac look like? Like, how far is that from your house, and have you fished it a bunch of times before?
Yeah, so I going back to college again, I kind of fell in love with the Potomac River my sophomore year of college because that was where the FLW National Championship was my sophomore year. And we went down there and we actually had a really good first day. I think we were in like 11th or 12th or something like that. And then on the second day, it blew 35 out of the south and we were making a pretty far run. And we were in a little tiny 18-foot boat and got out of the mouth of Mattawoman and filled my boat up to the top. And we're like, all right, I guess we can't do that. And then, it didn't really work out junk fishing on the second day. But regardless of that, that tournament was the first time I'd ever been there. And I like kind of, I don't know what it is about the place. I've just always loved it. Like, it's not like it's, you know, particularly a crazy fishery. You don't have insane bags. You can have good numbers days and stuff, but it's like something about the style of fishing down there kind of just clicks with me. And me and my buddy Ryan, who I fished that national championship with, we always try to go down mainly just to fun fish, like in the spring. And we didn't get to do it this year. So that's kind of like the main reason why I jumped into this tournament because I was like, well, I haven't been down there this year. I like to go at least once a year, so I'll go down and check it out.
It's just one of those places that kind of jives with your style. So
Yeah.
how does it actually set up this time of year? When I've never been to the Potomac, I know there's a lot of grass and it's tidal, which I've only really ever fished one tidal place before, and that was the James River. So I don't have a ton of experience
Yeah.
tidal fishing. So how does that, like I said, how does it set up this time of year? Is it relatively tough or?
Yeah, it's definitely this is probably the toughest time of year for it. I mean, obviously I didn't find it particularly tough this weekend compared to like how I usually feel it is, but if you look at the results, it reflects that it was pretty bad for most guys. I have a fair bit of tidal experience because I fish the Upper Chesapeake Bay quite a bit. It's like about 2 hours from my house, so we fish a bunch of tournaments every spring down there. So I personally love tidal fishing. I know a lot of people are it's their worst enemy, but for me, I'm a pretty big fan of it. Um, and yeah, I mean, I just went down there trying to check a mix of new and old stuff, and I was going in with the mindset of it's September, it's gonna be really tough, and it kind of just right from the jump started clicking with me. I practiced for 2 days, and both days were pretty dang good. And I was talking to my buddies who were down there, and I was talking to other guys at the ramp, and everybody's like, "Oh man, it sucks. This is so tough. Oh, this has been horrible." And I'm like, "I got like 40 bites today." So I was definitely feeling pretty good. I didn't know what the size was gonna be because I wasn't setting the hook really in practice, but I knew I was gonna be able to get bites. And my strategy and thought process was, if I can stay on track with what I've been doing and get 40, something bites a day, you're gonna get a few of those, bigger fish just by the law of averages, and that's kind of exactly what happened.
Right. So in practice, like you said, you weren't really setting the hook. So you
No.
didn't know you were on any sort of winning fish. You just knew you were getting a lot of bites when most guys were not, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the day before the tournament, I found like the primary couple areas that I wound up fishing during the tournament, and I only stuck two fish. One was like a 3 pounder, and one was like a 2 and a quarter. And then I just like put a bobber stopper on my hook and just shook them off for the rest of the day. And I got so many bites down those stretches that I knew that's where I was going. But even that first one, a 3 pounder, like this time of year at the Potomac, a 3 pounder is a good one.
Right.
So when I checked that size, I was like, if I can find a way to catch 5 of these, I'll be pretty happy. That's a top 10.
Oh, 100%. I mean, like you said, just looking at the results, I mean, your weight was obviously good, and there were a couple weights near the top that were decent, and then after that, it fell off pretty quickly,
Yeah, I mean,
size-wise.
12 pounds cracked the top 10, which is
Right.
easy.
Right. That's pretty crazy. So, did you feel after practice? Did you feel relatively good, just knowing the number of bites you were getting compared to everyone else, or were you still just kind of
I,
questioning just because you didn't know the size?
I definitely, I didn't think I was gonna like win the tournament or anything, but I definitely knew I was gonna do well. Like I was expecting, you know, top 10 range because, like I said, I wasn't lacking bites at all. And this time of the year, as long as you can get 5 in the boat that aren't like total dinks, you're probably sitting pretty good. So I knew I could, no matter what, get 12, 13, 14 pounds, which, I figured would be good enough for about top 10 range. And that was kind of like my worst case scenario for the day.
Right. So then things ended up working out, obviously, for you in terms of you ended up weighing 18 and 3/4, which ended up, I mean, that was over 2 pounds, 2.5
Yeah.
pounds. You beat the guy in second, which is, I mean, that's a pretty decent margin with that. I mean, it wasn't like a huge tournament, but 80 something, 90 something boats.
Yeah, somewhere around there. It was,
Right.
it was,
So,
it's like I said, the only thing I was worried about was the size. And when I got to my first spot on my third cast, I caught a 4 1/4. And I was like, all right, well, there's my kicker out of the way, or what I thought was going to be my kicker.
right.
And then 15 minutes later, my third fish was a 5 1/2. And I don't usually do this. I'm very afraid of the jinx, and I don't like to say things out loud. But for whatever reason, when I got that 5 1/2 in the boat, it was only my third fish, and I turned to my co-angler and I was like, "Yeah, we could probably win this tournament today."
Yeah. I'm
Which
having,
I can't believe I said that out loud. It wound up not biting me in the butt, but you just know, like that time of year, when you have a 4 and a 5 1/2, it's like I just need to fill out this limit, and I have a shot at it.
right. So you touched on how your day went a little bit, but just walk me through day one. I read the MLF article about how you wanted us talking about fishing like hard cover within grass beds and flipping a jig like a homemade jig. So just talk to me a little bit about how that day went from when you took off. I know, like you said, your first fish was a 4 1/4 and your third fish was 5 1/2. So it started pretty dang well, but did you get the number of bites you expected? Like how many fish did you catch that day and how were you actually catching them?
I actually got way less bites than I was expecting. Like I said, I was on about 40 bites, and I probably caught between 15 and 20 fish that day. And I think the main reason for that is when the tide switched to incoming, it was wind against tide, and that was at about like, I don't know, like 10 o'clock. And that wind against tide kind of held up the water, and the tide totally slacked out for like 3 hours. So I had a really long period in the middle of the day where the bite just like totally didn't exist. Like I'm happy I was able to capitalize on my boarding bite because I thought I was gonna have a lot more time, uh, to get those bites. But once that tide slacked off, I tried to force it a little bit before I wound up leaving. I did leave somewhat early, but it's because I came to the conclusion like I just had to go find moving water somewhere else because it had been like 2 hours of barely catching anything, a couple small keepers that didn't help, but it was it was rough at the end there before I started bouncing around. But it started off hot, yeah, like you said, I was throwing a hand tied, just a black and blue ball head jig. Started tying my jigs like 3 years ago, and that just little mini ball head jig I make with like a pretty thin black and blue skirt. I just have a ton of confidence in it. Like it's one of my number one bite getters. Like anywhere I go. So, when I was flipping hardcover, which is what I was doing, a mix of a few different things, wood, stumps, docks, and I did catch a few in the grass, but it was like, it wasn't just like going down a bank of laydowns. It had to be hardcover in like a grass mix, because the fish still wanted to relate to the grass, but it's just like when you find that hard stuff, now you know exactly where he's sitting. So it's just way less wasted casts than just like, aimlessly flipping around in the grass bed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I said, I don't know that much about tidal fishing, but did you kind of focus on that hard cover since I know you mentioned the tide was incoming after a while, so that means the tide was falling in the morning? Did that really start, like, kind of concentrate this fish on those harder pieces of cover so they kind of gave them somewhere to pull off to a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is typically the thought process. If I'm being totally honest, the day before I was kind of shocked at the fact that it didn't really seem to matter what the tide was. Like, I waited a while down there when I was practicing to see like what would happen when the water started to get up, and they just like kept biting on that stuff. But the difference was just that the water was moving that whole day. You get into any tidal fishery, like obviously guys like the low tide, guys like the outgoing because it sucks them to cover, but the biggest thing is just making sure your water is moving. Like if your water is low and they're tight to the cover, but it's dead slack, those fish will sit there and sometimes you can see them. If it's clear enough water, you'll be looking at one and they will not bite if that water is not moving. So it was one of those things where I knew I could get bit as long as the water was moving, but that's exactly what happened was the water stopped moving. So luckily I was just able to capitalize in the morning pretty well.
So after the morning, did you end up catching more fish? Like, did you run the tide a little bit to go find a little bit of moving water, and did you end up catching some in the afternoon, or was it pretty much done after that morning bite that you had?
Yeah, so I had about 16 and a half pounds pretty quick, which looking back on the results, I think would have been enough to win it anyway.
Right.
But I definitely didn't think so at the time. And I wound up catching another 4-pounder at like, I want to say like 12:30, 1 o'clock, which was kind of when I started to think like maybe I would have a shot. I knew how tough it was, and based on the weights and stuff, that like 18, 12, or whatever it was would be competitive, and that's what I had on my scale. My scale pretty much matched what MLF weighed exactly. So I knew what I had, and I knew it would be competitive, but it was just one of those things where it's like, I don't know if you have this, but I always have this, like, on days that I'm catching them, my brain is always like, well, this means everybody else is catching them too.
Oh, 100%.
And I'm like, well, if I'm catching them this good, somebody else has them. So I actually had lost a 3.5-pounder earlier in the day, broke me off on a spinning rod. And the whole day up until like right before I weighed in, I was totally convinced that that was the fish that was gonna lose it for me. But it wound up being even a little bit tougher than I anticipated.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, it's so easy to get in your own head. Like if you're catching this good, someone else is catching them even better. Because I mean, the competition anymore is just so stout everywhere you fish. So like, I mean, if you're catching them that good, someone has to be catching them better. Like that's how it always seems. But clearly, I mean, you had a pretty convincing win with over 2.5 pounds, which is pretty cool. So you had 2 4+ pounders plus a 5.5 pound big bass, which won big bass at the tournament. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so because I weighed in 2 fish that were like, 2 somethings. I mean, the amount of like 12 to 14-inch fish that you catch down at that river is insane. Like I was catching 2-pounders one after another after another after another, and I still couldn't call like a 2 and change that I had.
Right.
Like I said, breaking off that 3.5, I was like, I had one that was a little smaller than I wanted it to be. And I was like, if I had that 3.5, I have the perfect bag. That's going to be the one that gets me. And I was fully convinced of that the whole day.
Yeah, that was like almost haunts you. And then after you win, you're like, okay, I can live with it.
Exactly. Because it's one of those things, it's like the exact opposite of like when you're having a tough day and you're trying to like convince yourself, you're like, oh, maybe the fishing is just like really bad and everybody else is having a tough day. And then you get in and somebody's always got them.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, well, if I'm having a good day, then probably a few guys got them, like.
Yeah. Oh, of course. That's how it always seems to be. That's so cool though to be able to get that win at only your second BFL. So, especially and to be on a river that you like so much just from going through the college ranks, and then like you said, I mean, going to fish there every year, at least trying to, and then getting to win your second BFL ever on that same place. That's pretty cool. Hopefully that same sort of luck will go your way for the Grand Lake National Championship.
Yeah, I sure hope so. I had two places from college that I wanted to get revenge on. One was the Potomac River, which we just checked off, and then the other was Grand Lake, which we have a significantly higher stakes opportunity to get revenge on. So, I mean, hopefully we can find a way to go 2 for 2. But
right, that'd be pretty cool. My last question about the tournament: when you ended up running from your primary area where you ended up catching your fish in the morning and decided to leave, when you left, did you go to another place in practice you had found, or did you go run somewhere else based off how the tide was moving that particular tournament day?
Yeah, I ran to a place called Chickamuxon Creek, which is like right next to Mattawoman, which is I guess kind of a popular like community hole creek. It's a small creek, but it's essentially just like a big giant grass bed. And I'd gotten quite a few bites in there in practice, but when I rolled up into it, the wind direction, it was just like the water was way dirtier than it was, and it was blown out, and I wasn't seeing the bait that I was seeing in practice. So I fished there for a little while, and it didn't work out, and I kind of just bailed on that and then ran back up into Mattawoman, and for the last, couple hours of the tournament, I just hit as many spots as I could, like in and around the ramp that I knew, and tried a bunch of new stuff too. Because also towards the end of the day, I was trying to just get my co-angler a couple fish because he only had 3 and stuff. So we were just bouncing around trying all sorts of different stuff.
Right. I'm assuming based off the way you were talking and how you caught him, did live scope have any sort of play in this tournament? With I'm assuming you didn't catch him off live scope, but did you help locate fish doing that or?
No. The live scope was turned off all day.
Yeah.
Which is very rare nowadays. But like I said, I was fishing inside of a grass bed still, and like a pretty dang thick one at that. So you couldn't see anything regardless, even if you wanted to try to use it.
Right, it was all covered up. Didn't even matter. I was just curious. I didn't know some guys now have gotten so proficient with shallow scoping and stuff. You look at, I'm talking top level, but you look at the Drew Gills, and he's talking about how the angle of the laydowns creates a certain shadow that stuff that's way over your head. I don't even know what that means, but
I do it quite a bit. Like I said, New Jersey's a lot of shallow water fishing,
right?
So I've utilized the shallow water scoping quite a bit, especially this year because I just got a new boat this year and got the new live scope and finally got a full size 12-inch screen and that whole thing. So I've been really making it a point this year to try to master it, and I'm definitely getting pretty solid at it. It was something I definitely used in practice. I fished one spot in practice that I thought I was going to go to in the tournament, but I wound up not needing it. But it was another spot that had a bunch of stumps and laydowns and stuff, but there was no grass around it. So I was actually using perspective mode to locate these stumps and laydowns that were under the water, you couldn't visually see them. So I was doing a lot of that in practice, but I just kind of knew what my stuff was by the time the tournament came around. So I didn't really need it.
So some of your stuff it helped locate in practice, but like you said, once you got to the tournament day, you were so comfortable and proficient, kind of knew the nitty gritty of your spots that ended up working out in your favor.
Yeah, it was actually kind of cool to it. It was a super old school type of fishing day that is few and far between nowadays.
Winning a tournament, flipping laydowns, the black and blue jig.
Yeah.
It's kind of get back to the roots of it.
Yeah, it sounds like a headline from the 90s,
Right. That's cool. Well, we touched a little bit too on most memorable tournament. Do you think that this one would take it, or do you still think your national championship at Grand Lake?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say because it's so recent, but I would still probably say the national championship just because the gravity and the size of the tournament.
Right.
And it was my senior year of college. It was 4 years of work, all building up to it. Like this tournament was cool, and it was like one of my biggest like wins. But it was kind of just like a spur of the moment, show up and do it, which is a pretty cool thing in its own right.
Right.
Like, I mean, we had like camera guys in the boat and stuff, and like all my buddies following us around like on the third day and everything. And it was just a much bigger ordeal. You know, this
Right.
kind of just happened like out of nowhere. But
Right.
that
No, I
one
get
was
it.
one that we worked for forever for.
Yeah, I figured you'd say that. I was just curious since you actually ended up getting the actual win in this one. But like you said, I mean, I think the gravity of a national championship is still just like unmatched. That's so
Yeah,
cool. But
it's definitely one of my biggest like actual first place wins. But and that was one of the cool parts about this. Like I was talking to Jason about like this was the first time in a long time it felt like college again because like me and Jason and our other buddy Brennan came down who we used to travel with in college and we like got an Airbnb. We were just hanging out and taking it like casual and like having fun like we did back in college. So it was pretty cool because it felt like we were going back to that for a few days, and then to have the win happen on top of it, it was like it just felt like it was supposed to happen.
right, things go your way, and people I know um, it's what everyone says, but when things go your way, they just go your way, and that's how you
Yeah,
end up winning tournaments. And like I said, I mean, you caught big bass, 2 4+ pounders. I mean, you made the right moves when you needed to, and ended up getting a big win. So that's cool. But going a little bit off of this tournament, if you had like one piece of advice for people looking to get into the fishing scene, like you said, you came up through college, were successful in college, and to where you are now, and hopefully going to fish the Opens sometime in the future, whenever that comes around. Like, what would that piece of advice be? Because obviously, and anyone listening to this, where your story goes from, like you said, not even ever being in a bass boat your freshman year of college to now where you are, having the success you've had. Like that's all the levels that you've covered essentially. So, like what's your one piece of advice that got you from where you were then to now?
I would say the biggest thing I kind of touched on it a little bit when we were talking about the college stuff is that so much of it is confidence and like the mental game like that you don't even realize like obviously you have to have your time in on the water, you have to have the skill, you have to know what you're doing, but once you're a good competent tournament bass fisherman, I think one of the biggest things about it is the thought process and the confidence. Like you can you can tell how my tournament is gonna go based on my headspace. Like if I'm cool, calm, collected, having fun, just going out there and fishing, usually it's gonna be a good day. When it's a tournament where I'm trying too hard or I feel like I have too much pressure or something bad happens and I get spun out, like that's when you lose it. The biggest thing is just trying to keep your head screwed on, and at the end of the day, as cliche as it sounds, is like just have fun doing it. Like when you're having fun and not putting stress on yourself and thinking about the pressure, like the success just happens naturally based on that. Like all of my big tournaments, all of my wins, everything came on days where I like genuinely had a good time and just fished like super relaxed. Like on Saturday when I got that 5.8 in the boat, like I wasn't even shaking. Like it was super weird. It was like a out of body experience. Like I was cool as a cucumber all day, which is not usually me. Like usually I put a 3 pounder in and I'm vibrating. Um, but yeah, as basic and cliche as it sounds, it can't be overstated. Like just chill out and have fun. Like don't take it too seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with everything you just said. I mean, once you actually are able to calm down, I think your decision making just gets exponentially better, and I think that's really where that confidence comes in and allows you to just really excel in what you're doing in the moment. So it's cool to see that actually come into play through your career. But does this wind have any impact on like your future plans of like when you're going to fish the Opens or anything? I mean, I know like you said the payouts aren't great, so it's not like a substantial amount of money that you won or anything. But do you think that has any impact on your future plans?
I mean, it definitely helps a little bit.
Of
That
course.
that's one entry fee, or I guess
Right.
two entry fees. Um, but It pretty much it's looking like the plan is. I wanted and the plan was to fish them in this upcoming year, but it's just not gonna happen. So it's hopefully gonna be 26. I'm making it a goal to myself that um, no matter what the situation is, I'm gonna fish them not next year but the following year because I've been saving up money for a while. I've been working really hard to have the money to do it. Like I said, I just got a new boat this year, so I finally have like the rig to be able to do it because I was delusional out of college thinking I was gonna fish them in a 18-foot 2000 Triton,
Right.
and then I fished the Toyota series for 1 year and quickly found out that that was not going to happen. When our first tournament on Champlain, I almost ran out of gas and couldn't even get to the spot that I wanted to because of my old two-stroke that burnt like a gallon a minute. Um, I've kind of been slowly but surely setting myself up to do it. So the plan is not 2025, but 2026.
That's cool. Well, maybe you won't even have to worry about it. If you just go get
Yeah,
your berth
yeah.
taken care of at this national championship
That's the
coming up.
plan. That's the plan. That's what everybody's been saying to me, and that's why I got so into the Bass Nation thing because I was like, one, you got to keep the iron sharp. Everybody else is working hard. There are guys who are out there every single day. I mean, I fish 150 plus days a year. So I'm trying my best to do my part and get on the water as much as I can and fish as many tournaments as I can. Obviously they're not open level tournaments, but you can keep yourself in the tournament mindset and keep yourself winning and keep yourself doing well and just like building your confidence, through that. I think that's the best way to go into it is just be as prepared as possible.
Oh, 100%. And like you said, I mean, even though they're not open level tournaments, being dominant at the local and then regional level is always going to help you before trying to compete with these guys nationally that have been doing it for however long. And like you said, I mean, the guys down south get to fish 365 days a year if they want. So, and that's something us, I mean, even in Ohio and even more in Jersey, I'm sure, like, there's a whole period of year where it just gets tough to even get out and fish. I mean, stuff freezes and whatever.
Yeah.
We're down south and they have a tournament in the middle of January, and then you go to compete with them. Like, I haven't picked up a rod in 2 months. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
Yeah. I definitely push it way, way further than most guys do around here. But even at that, there are certain times where, there's literally a sheet of ice on the lake. So no matter how bad I want to do it, I don't have the choice.
Right.
So there's always a little bit of an off period in the winter, which is always a killer. I mean, like you being from Ohio, I'm sure like, when you start coming out of the woodwork end of February, early March, and you're fishing, you're like, oh my God, like I gotta find it again,
Right.
And it's such an unfortunate thing that we have down here, but it just is what it is.
Right, exactly. Not much we can do about it. But
Yeah.
before we wrap up here, do you have any sponsors or social media that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah. You guys can check me out at Alex Johnson Fishing on pretty much everything. I guess I'm mainly active on my Instagram. I'm trying to get back into doing YouTube videos and stuff. I used to do YouTube videos. I lived in Florida for a little while right after I graduated, and I did a bunch of videos down there when I was guiding and stuff. And then I kind of fell out of it when I moved back to Jersey. But me and actually Jason and a couple of my buddies are trying to start up a YouTube channel and get that going again. But for right now, I'm mainly active on my Instagram, Alex Johnson Fishing. I'm trying to get TikTok going too. And then shout out to Starbright. Starbright was the first company that kind of, took a stab on me coming out of college. And like I said, I fished those Toyota Series tournaments my first year, and I would not have been able to do that financially at all if it wasn't for their help. And, they continue to support me to right now. So shout out to those guys.
That's awesome. Well, Alex, I really appreciate you hopping on here. It was super cool to be able to talk on this level. Like I said, I haven't really got to do an episode of BFL Guy yet, so
Yeah.
it was an awesome episode, and I really appreciate you breaking down both how you came through the ranks of college fishing to where you are now and how you won this tournament. So I just want to say congrats again for myself, and hopefully you continue having success, and best of luck at the national championship coming up. Hopefully you get that revenge you need on Grand Lake.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you, and same goes to you. Good luck in however long you have left in college fishing, man. Live it up because it's the best.
I appreciate it.